Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday. Webinar Wednesdays, as most of you know, has been around since January 2013. But not every Wednesday, but for the last 36 Wednesdays, we've been holding the Pandemic Relief Series webinar. So good afternoon. I think we got some really informative information for you today. And good afternoon. My name's Kelly Bearden. I'm the director of the CSU Bakersfield Small Business Development Center, or SBDC. Thank you for joining us today. A little bit about the SBDC program. It's a program in all 50 states. It is 6 different programs, regions here in California. Because of the vastness of California, we have 6 regions. We're part of the Central California region, which is the middle part, 14 counties from the Pacific Ocean to the state of Nevada, all the way down to Kern County and up to the top of Mono County, as you're well aware of. We do have 6 service centers in that region. We're located in downtown Bakersfield. We have a center in Clovis, Merced, Modesto, Salinas, and at San Luis Obispo. So remember, we do have a lot of consultants and training opportunities that we provide you, and we're open. Just don't try to walk through our door. So, big thanks again to the number of sponsors that we have that make our webinar possible each week, and kind of listing a few of those today. We won't go through each one, but we'll highlight a couple. Of course, Kern County, California. And of course, the CSU BPA, the School of Business and Public Administration, along with Mid-State Development Corporation. So thank you all, and thank you for being our sponsors. And got a great guest today, so really want to try to cut her as much time as possible. So what's up today, November 18th? Well, we're going to go through an update on the state and local mandated reclosing, as I'm calling it. The vast closures that have happened over the last week, and most of them commenced on yesterday from Monday's governor's announcement. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're also going to look at the next steps, because we focus so much on trying to reduce the curve and get into a better tier to where we could open our retail businesses up to perhaps 50%, our restaurants, get them to 50%. And now we just slid back a tier. So we're going to look at next steps, and we're going to continue to focus a little bit on containment. And we're going to talk a lot about the hot topic of only the week, and that is vaccines. So we're going to talk a little bit, have a little bit of news on the stimulus PPP and EIDL programs. As most of you know, there's not much going on in those areas still. We had hoped after the election, which was 15 days ago, that we would have some movement on stimulus. We really haven't. A second PPP is still hanging out there potentially. It's strange, because I think both parties know that we need some type of a package out there. It's just trying to get that package out of Washington. So what happens? We'll find out. We've got a lot of local support programs that we'll just give a quick nod to right now. Remember the BCARES, the Bakersfield CARES Program, CARES Act money. Grants up to $20,000 is still available. Go to their website. Also, many of you reached out and were part of $30 million that went out for the Kern Recovers, similar to a PPP type program, but it fixed a lot of the early issues with PPP. And if you were able to get one of the maximum loans in Kern County of the Kern Recovers loan program, that would have been up to $75,000 for for-profit and nonprofit businesses. Your forgiveness is coming up now. So forgiveness on that, which was a 16-week program, originally came out right after the 8-week PPP program, but it was a 16-week program, and now many of you are looking at later this week for a due date for the forgiveness process. So we're getting a lot of questions. We're going to be welcoming back Lorna Kibbey. Lorna was a presenter at our webinar Wednesday about a year ago. So welcome to have Lorna back. And as always, your questions and also a poll. So stay timely as we try to do here on Webinar Wednesday, and talk a little bit, not that just yet, but a little bit about a poll and what's going on. And we're talking a lot this week about vaccines. With vaccines, we have apparently 2 that are very close to getting FDA approval. And so I'm going to ask you a question and then comment on it maybe a little bit afterwards. I'm even going to allow our panelists to vote. So Lorna, you and I can vote if we want. But we're going to launch the poll in just a second. And it's a couple of vaccines appear to be very close to receiving FDA approval. If a vaccine is available, I would get it as soon as available to me. I would wait a few months to see if there's any potential conflicts or issues. I'd wait several months to evaluate any longer term effects, and I don't plan on ever getting it. So 4 options. And it's an interesting question. The reason it's timely, but the last time I was at the state capitol, what happened was there was some very loud protests that were happening inside the state capitol a couple years ago. And they were on vaccines, mandatory vaccine for school-aged children. So I know it can be a contentious issue. So let's ask one last time. What would you do when a vaccine's available? Get it as soon as possible. Wait a while to see any potential issues. Wait several months to evaluate the issues, or you don't ever plan on getting it. Okay, we got a good turnout. We got 74% of you voted. So let's end this poll and share it to you right now. And the results are 32% of you do not plan on ever getting it. Very interesting. The rest are kind of split between 24% wait several months, and then the first 2 would be get it as soon as available, and also wait a few months. So it's very interesting and a very interesting issue. And unfortunately, right now, it seems like our best possibility for getting our businesses open. So it's something that's happening, and it's happening very quickly, and something that's going to be available. So thank you for participating. That's our only poll question today. Behaving, only 1 instead of 3. So stop sharing, and thank you for voting on that. And I think a lot of that's going to depend on the vaccine is pretty much, where you're coming from a perspective. I could see myself wanting the vaccine now. I definitely want it for my 87-year-old mother who tends to shop multiple times each day and apparently doesn't realize there's a pandemic going on. I'd like to see her get it right away. So it's going to really depend on your perspective. And that was an interesting poll result. So thank you very much. So let's kind of move on, and let's talk about a few of the things that we've talked about before. And that is going to be some of the free testing that's available. Again, I mentioned that we'll probably be providing the free information each week on testing sites. The Kern County Board of Supervisors this week did something rather unique. They authorized a $25 gift card for those that would go get tested. And that is really kind of addressing the issue that we have had, where we have been subjected to not enough tests and a heavier hand in some of the tier systems here in Kern County. So a number of sites are going to be available. There's going to be spread throughout the county. We have one Thursday in Delano. And these are put on again by the Latino Task Force, formed through the Kern County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And we have Thursday in Delano, Friday in Taft. Also, you'll see in Taft that there's going to be a limited number of flu shots that are available. Walk-ins are accepted. Also, then on Saturday up in McFarland. So McFarland, USA is getting a testing site. So there you go, McFarland on Saturday, November 21st, and in Wasco, the City of Roses, on the 22nd. So that is a little bit about what's happening with our testing. Still encourage to do something with the attainment issues, because when we go look at our numbers here in Kern County, not very good. 16.1. I don't have the last 5 or 6 in front of me right now, but you will recall that those were ranging between 4 to 6 new COVID cases per day per 100,000. You'll recall our population, we have roughly 900,000 here in Kern County. So that's around 155 a day that we're getting as far as new COVID tests. And you'll see the positive rate has gone up, but it's really this adjusted rate. So even though we're at 16.1, we get it upward adjusted because of not enough individuals are getting tested, at least according to the governor's office and the state medium, which they use as the reference point there. So those are the main issues. We just saw really a lot of things happen, including my map disappearing. But a lot of things with the 58 counties in Kern, we saw 41 of them now go to widespread. And that is obviously the most restrictive. It's 94% of our population. It's a trend that's happening, I know, across the country where, and even in Europe and throughout other parts of the world where the virus is coming back quickly and doesn't really look well for getting out of that very restrictive purple tier anytime soon. So that's a little bit on that. We look at our Kern County numbers through the Public Health Services Department here in Kern and look at some of the numbers. And one thing that is kind of nice is that what has been stabilizing is kind of the death toll, which was rather extensive for a while, but has kind of slowed down and kind of shows what is going on with some of the treatments that we've learned over time, some of the things going on there. So a little bit about what's going on in Kern. We look at a national picture of kind of looking at what's going on, and see a large part of the middle part of the country, again, is really problematic. You know, last time when we looked at this, we saw about half of the state of Utah being white or totally unaffected. And it shows you how fast things can change. In a week or two, you're seeing counties with 514 average cases per thousand. And this is, of course, according to Johns Hopkins University, which is tracking this information. So a lot of things going on out there, not all of it too good in that regards. We do have some information and some things that are improving, but for the large part, it's just hunker down, wear the mask, let's get our businesses opened. So I'm going to reshare back to the PowerPoint here. And we did mention the free test. There's actually another free test that's going to happen tomorrow night at KGET TV, channel 17. On 21st Street. There's one in Bakersfield, and that'll be the one in Bakersfield tomorrow afternoon. Again, free COVID-19 testing. So we got 5 of them. Moving on to our question of the week, question of the day, and it's regarding the PPP loan forgiveness issues, and it's our payroll and benefits exceed our PPP loan amount. For forgiveness purposes, should I add rent and utilities to make the application appear more complete? Well, my answer is I think 100% payroll is the best way to do this. If you go back and you look at the intent of Congress, if you look at the name of the program, the Payroll Protection Program, the fact that everything's lasting a lot longer than anticipated when the program first came out is an issue, but still, it was to keep individuals employed to get them over the hump through the pandemic and be positioned ready to go back to work and the economy to take off again. Well, that's not really happening, but still, one thing we are seeing is we're seeing that the intent was for payroll, and anytime you can use it for payroll, that is the way to go. And remember, that is, again, for salary and wages for an employee or a owner of the business. The one thing that you want to watch for on the payroll amounts, the salary and wages, is there are maximum limits based on how you applied initially. So if you're an owner, you can make 2.5 months of your salary for 2019. So that can be up to $20,833, but you have to have earned $100,000 or more to cap out at that 2833. So keep that in mind. And also employees that are highly compensated employees can earn up to a little over $46,000. So I would keep the salary amounts. Again, remember that the paid benefits, health, retirement, and state unemployment tax are allowable expenses. But remember, it's the amount that you pay as an employer. Amounts that are withheld from an employee for retirement or for health benefits do not qualify. So there are a few things to watch for. We'll probably get into in the next couple of weeks, we'll probably get into more of a review program because we haven't talked about it. One thing you can do for me on the PPP forgiveness, if you have a particular bank that you have your PPP loan through and you have not yet done your forgiveness, or your bank hasn't opened up your portal. I know many of the smaller local branches or local banks here, the community banks here in Kern County, have actually done that. And I think a poll we did a couple of weeks ago had almost 20% of you that have actually filed for forgiveness already. But if you have a bank that is still because remember, the banks are really the go-to people here. You've got plenty of time. The banks are really going to be your friend or your lender for the PPP, so check them. But if you are told that you are not able to file for forgiveness yet through your lender, please leave that for me in the chat, and we'll address that in a future episode. Just lastly, what's the timeline for forgiveness? Something that we've showed the last couple of weeks, but there still seems to be a lot of confusion. If you look at one of your three versions of the 3508 SBA form, you're going to find that those three forms say in the upper right-hand corner that it expires on October 31st. Nothing to do with the program. It's just the OMB clearance for particular government forms. So if you have 24 weeks to use your funds or up to December 31st, the very earliest that your forgiveness application is due, since you do have a 10-month window, is going to be the latter part of July. And that's if you got your loan as one of the very, very first individuals, first people to get the loan. So keep that in mind. There's still plenty of time. So it is kind of frustrating. I call it a procrastinator's delight. I mean, come on, this is great. 10 months and then 60 days for your lender to verify, 90 days for the SBA to review your app. You could be literally into 2022 before your PPP loan is officially forgiven by the SBA. And that opens up some other questions and other issues and things that we're going to be talking about in December. So there you go. Questions today, hit your questions box and hit your question box, and we'll hit Q&A afterwards. So please put your questions in there. Chat regarding to the bank or other issues, you can put that in your chat section. So it's great to welcome back Lorna Kibbey. Lorna was with us last year for Webinar Wednesday. She had a little bit more time because there wasn't a pandemic going on, but Lorna is actually an outstanding presenter. I've seen her quite a few times, actually. Make a special trip if she's speaking to go see her. She's a content speaker, author, designs leadership seminars, motivational keynotes, etc. Lorna has experience. She has firsthand experience dealing in difficult situations. She served as a leader manager for 24 years in the public sector. It was those years in the public sector that shaped her into the leadership expert she is today, writing the book Becoming a Better Boss. Your guidebook to 25 fundamental management responsibilities was published last year. She has her master's degree from the University of South Florida and is an active member of the National Speakers Association, a longtime chapter leader for the association, talent, etc. Lorna, take it away, please.
Hi, everybody. Oh boy, that was so interesting, everything you had to say, Kelly. I'm freaked out because like Bank of America hasn't even asked me for my forgiveness application yet. And I saw somebody else said Wells Fargo hadn't either. So that made me feel better. So lots going on, huh? I'm going to share my screen so I can talk with you about a few concepts here that we want to talk about that I think will help everybody. So today we're going to talk about 5 bold techniques, and these have, I've classified this as becoming a better boss because that's really where I focus on, is on helping leaders and people to be better bosses. It's interesting in your life how there are certain things that you latch onto, and sometimes it's words. Do you have favorite words? What a crazy question. I actually do. One of my favorite words is paradigm. And it's really interesting that I think right now we're most likely in the middle of a paradigm shift like none other we've seen. I think I'm fascinated because when you think about it through the years, the shifts that we've seen are so remarkable, and it's easy for us to look back on those now and go, wow, that was really something. I mean, all the way back to even the telephone. Do you realize that when the telephone was first introduced to AT&T, they dismissed it as a toy? It's something that we don't need. They dismissed it as a toy. Of course, a few years later, Alexander Graham Bell and company bought AT&T, but yeah, that was an example of a paradigm shift for over 100 years ago, right? And Xerox, did you know that someone came to them with the idea for a copy machine, and they said, we just don't really see a need for this, dismissed it, right? Has anybody ever rented a movie from Blockbuster Video? What a business that was, right? Completely obsolete now because they didn't do anything to keep up with what was happening with the digital transformation that occurred. And now there's no more Blockbuster Video. On and on. Oh, how about Kodak and pictures? I mean, I can remember growing up, we used to take pictures on our camera on a roll of stuff called film. I don't know if you've ever seen it. We had to take this film to a drugstore or to actually a photo store, which was a lot of times a little kiosk on a corner, and they would develop this film into pictures for us. And as you know, Kodak didn't really keep up with what was happening with digital, and yeah, it really transformed their business. So we've seen all kinds of paradigm shifts in history. Now, you may have heard of Joel Barker, and he's the guy I'm showing you on the screen. He's done a lot of work on paradigms, and I've really studied it, enjoyed his work, because I think, understanding when a paradigm is shifting is so important to us. What he says is that when a paradigm shifts, we go back to zero. And I think maybe that's where we are. I think maybe we're in a time in history when things are shifting, and we need to figure out the rules all over again. One thing, for example, is the whole idea of remote workers. I mean, that's been happening for a while, but many of us have chosen to ignore it. I do a lot of work with government organizations, and I've actually had managers argue with me before March of 2020 that remote work could never be a reality in government, that it could never work, it could never happen. And then in March, everything changed. All of a sudden, everybody was ordered to stay home. Is that a paradigm shift or what? I mean, people are now coming out of this going, there is so much we can do remotely that we never, ever thought would be possible. In a way, it's given us permission and opportunities to try things new ways. But what worries me is that many managers are under the impression that they don't know how to handle it. It worries me that there is outright panic in some organizations because we don't know how to manage in this new reality. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to set those new rules that we have in a paradigm shift. But here's a fact for you. The truth is, we already have the skills that we need. Managers everywhere, leaders everywhere, this is not a different skill set. It's the same skills. And I think when we can embrace that and understand, wait a minute, don't panic here. We know what to do for our employees. We know how to take care of our people, and we know how to do business. We have to execute differently. There's different perception, but all the skills that we have already as managers and leaders apply. And I was so happy to see this in Harvard Business Review, where they actually backed me up and said, you know, we have a tendency to overcompensate and approach remote workers and virtual teams as mythical beasts, right? But the truth is we have the skill set that we need already. So that's the first thing, is I want you to start trying to change your mindset. If you're in that mindset that I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to manage this, I don't know what to do about these remote people, I don't know how to do this. I want you to start to think a little differently about it and recognize that you know what to do. I'm going to give you 5 bold techniques today. Are they easy? No. That's what makes management and leadership so amazing, right? Because our job is to deal with people. And anytime we're dealing with people, it's tough. People have their own will, they have their own mindset, and our job is to get the job done through them. So we really have to pay attention to how we're managing and what's going on with our people. So I want to talk to you about these concepts that you can put into practice. They're not new, but it's the way we execute. So 5 bold techniques. Warning, you have to be courageous to do these things, especially now, because it feels very different. One more thing on mindset. There's been a mindset, I think, for years that people who work remotely are not a part of the everyday team. You know, they work remotely for a reason. You know, they don't have to be in the office. They're on their own. They do their own thing. We check in every now and then. That's not what remote work is, especially now when people are working from home or any remote location. They're still working. So we have to stop thinking of this as something separate and apart from ourselves and start thinking about how to bring our teams together, how to bring our employees together in a different way. So the first thing I want to talk about is just empowering your employees. Empowerment. I love this from Ken Blanchard. Empowerment is about letting go so that others can get going. What is empowerment? Well, it means giving authority. It means enabling people and promoting their own self-actualization. This is a big trust issue. Many times in panic situations, like what we've kind of been going through here, managers will try to rein it in tighter because they're trying to control something that they can't see. This is a time when we really need to make sure that our employees are empowered. They are educated. You've hired good people. You've educated your people. They know what to do. Let them do it. Don't be so freaked out by trying to control everything that you're suffering from just major stress. Empower your people, use their skills, trust them. That means involving them in solving problems and in making decisions. That means asking for their input, that participatory management style, and getting their feedback, opening up those channels for their input and for their feedback. Remember, we need to hear what their opinions are. We need to hear their suggestions for solutions. So this is the time to really open up to that and get their input, get their feedback, and be open to solutions that they may be offering that you wouldn't have thought of on your own. That's what I love about management, is I don't have to do it all by myself. I have a lot of great people out there to help me. Remember these social connections. We are very socially connected at this point in time. And there is a whole part of your workforce who lives for social connection, right? So let's employ that. Let's figure out ways to do that. That may mean that some of your employees who are very socially connected will take the lead on helping other employees to be more socially connected. So we have to allow for those social connections, especially now. We're not face-to-face every day. We're not having water cooler talk. We're not passing people in the hallway saying, yeah, hey, I just got a cup of coffee. You want to sit down for a minute? Or just talking about things casually. We have to find other ways to have those conversations. And that means allowing for it virtually, remotely, and not leaving it out of the equation. Delegation, more important than ever. Delegation is something I hate to say again on my soapbox about, so I'll try not to, but I don't think sometimes that managers realize how important delegation is. Delegation is critical to your success, critical to the success of your employees. You hired people that you trust. Let them do the work. Teach them how. Help them to advance their skills through delegation, and also to lighten your load just a little bit. Here's the thing about delegation. There are specific steps to doing it right. If you just do it half, if you don't really take the time to do it right, yeah, it'll be screwed up. You'll hate delegation. You'll say, this is ridiculous. I can do it faster myself. I don't want to delegate this stuff. There are specific steps you have to take. So if you don't know those steps, there's two things you can do. You can call me. You can look at my book. You can go out there and find some help somewhere on how to delegate correctly. Just make sure you're doing it right. It's very important that you do it right and that you do it. So delegation right now, very, very important. In empowering your employees, I found this quote from Richard Branson. You've probably heard this, and I like this. Train people well enough so they can leave, but treat them well enough so they don't want to. Yeah, people worry a lot about how much we're spending on training and how much we're spending on bringing our employees up to par with skills, how much time we're spending teaching them when we delegate. But what happens if we don't and they stay? What if we don't teach them? What if we don't treat them right and they stay? Then they become problem employees. Been there, done that? Yeah, it's not good. Very time consuming. So that's the first thing, empowering your employees. Okay, this one's kind of strange. Create disruptive harmony. What does that mean? Well, here's what it means. Right now, especially when we're managing remotely, when we're having remote meetings, we are sometimes skipping over the obvious and sometimes skipping over some of those debates and discussions that we need to have. I mean, what's really going on below the surface? What I see is a tendency for people to want to get off of these Zoom meetings as quickly as they can. And I understand why, because if you're doing a Zoom meeting or Teams or whatever platform you use, it's intense, right? I mean, you really have to be focused. It's not like I can sit back and, just kind of hang out a little bit like maybe I can in a meeting, like go somewhere in my thoughts for a few minutes and then come back in. It's like you're being watched all the time, right? I know it's intense. The danger is that if we don't take time to have that debate, if we don't take time to let people disagree, if we don't take time to have those really deep discussions and that dialogue, we might miss something really big. If you're doing a meeting and everybody's nodding at you and saying nothing, that's a danger sign. Because believe me, there's never a time when everybody agrees with you always, right? So you need to hear what's going on. If you've read The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, which is one of my favorite team books, if you're looking for someone to help you with teams, I'd highly recommend that. He says, I don't think anyone ever gets completely used to conflict. If it's not a little uncomfortable, then it's not real. The key is to keep doing it anyway. And what I'm seeing is that sometimes in this platform, we're a little less patient with that. We want to get off the call. We want to just move along. And silence is like so hard for us, right? It's so hard to say, okay, what do you guys think? And then just be quiet. Man, that's hard. But sometimes that's what we need to do, because it's very important that we're hearing from everybody and that everyone is participating. Which brings us to this one, addressing problems. This is so hard to do face-to-face. I mean, it's always hard to do, is to address problems, but it's also one of the most problematic areas for leaders. If you've read the surveys, read the books, I mean, we hear this over and over and over again. The number one demotivator for employees, there's just widespread agreement on this, is that their supervisor tolerates poor performance. Their supervisor tolerates poor performance. If you've ever been that person who's working your tail off while your coworker is not and no one's doing anything, you know how demoralizing that is. So addressing problems is critical in normal environment. Virtual environment, it's so easy for things to get by you. You really have to be paying attention to what's going on. I just had a manager tell me a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about this that he has an employee he's pretty sure hasn't done anything for the last 2 months, and he doesn't know how to get a handle on it. And well, my first question is, 2 months? Are you kidding me? You let this go for 2 months? That's really scary. You got to nip these things in the bud. You got to watch out for what's going on. You have to be acutely aware, which means being in communication with your employees, not just like in a meeting, but one-on-one, being in touch, listening, pay attention to what's going on around you. When you see some kind of a problem developing, or you even suspect it, best thing you can do is nip it in the bud, nip it right away. The quicker you begin to deal with it, the easier it will be to resolve. You wait 2 months, yeah, not so easy. So we really have to be aware that this is not a time just to skip over problems that may be developing under the surface. We need to be addressing those things head on. Oh, here's a big one for you. Motivation. I get this question so often. What is the secret to motivating others? How can we keep people motivated, especially now? This is a pretty tough time. It is. I don't know if you've dealt with this with your employees very much one-on-one. If you have, kudos to you, because I know it's not easy. And if you haven't, you probably need to be thinking about how to check in with folks and just seeing how they are. Motivation isn't easy anytime, but now it's like, how can I possibly motivate people when I can't even talk to them face to face? Well, there's a secret to motivation that saves you. And I don't know if you've ever heard this before. I feel like I should charge an extra admission price just for giving you this secret. But here it is. The secret to motivating others is, are you ready? Drum roll. You can't. You can't really motivate anyone. Motivation has to come from within. It's intrinsic. It comes from within the person. The best you can do is create an environment so that people can self-motivate. So all the rah-rah parties and whatever you think you can do to improve morale and get people motivated, it's not going to work for everybody. Everybody's different. And really the key to motivation is needs theory. Like good old Maslow. Remember good old Maslow, that little chart he did for us that looks like a triangle that told us first you have to, be fed, you have to be healthy before you can begin to feel secure, and on up the chart. Many needs theorists agree that some people have a need for affiliation, some people have a need for knowledge. Whatever their need is, that need has to be met in order for them to be motivated. Stephen Covey told us, motivation is a fire from within. If someone else tries to light that fire under you, chances are it will burn very briefly. Yeah, we can threaten folks. If you have someone with a problem like some disciplinary problem, like they're coming in late for work, you can motivate them to be on time by threatening them, right? If you don't come to work, I'm going to fire you. Here's your first warning and 2 more and you're gone. The truth is, if that person is not self-motivated, coming to work on time, you're going to end up firing them. Maybe you haven't asked them why they're coming in late. I actually met a lady in this situation where the boss kept threatening her that they were going to fire her because she was late. Now, what she had told me was that she was having a really big problem getting her kids out of the house on time, which you can probably imagine and relate to that. The daycare window of when it opened and when school started and being in at the office on time was so narrow that one red light could mess it up for her. But they never really asked her why she wasn't on time. They just, went at her that you have to be on time. They ended up firing her. The unfortunate thing was she didn't even try to tell them until the final meeting where they were firing her, and it was too late. So no threats were going to motivate her because her need was something that couldn't be met by the employer, right? So what you have to be able to do is create an atmosphere for your employees so that you see what their needs are and you can make sure their needs are met. This is why some employees love public praise, like bring them up in front of everybody and tell everybody how fantastic they are, and they're just like in heaven. But another employee, you bring them up in front of everyone and they're going to die. That's the last thing they want. What we do know is that everybody enjoys appreciation, so I think this is especially a time when we need to help our employees to feel valued and express appreciation to them, for what they do. Just thank you, thank you for handling that customer. Thank you for speaking up in the meeting. Thank you for coming to all of these meetings. Thank you for suggesting that we should all have our cameras on. Whatever you can find, just create that environment, make sure you're meeting their needs. But the bigger picture is that you're really going to have to figure out what their needs are in order to motivate them. How do you do that? Boy, that's a question. In real estate, they say, let's see, the most important thing is location, right? I think in motivation, the most important thing for a leader is pay attention. Watch what's going on. Someone who was performing at one level now goes in a different direction. Something's probably changed and their needs are different. So pay attention to what's going on with them. One cool thing is that with remote meetings, we're seeing things that we haven't seen. Like we're seeing kids. I've met families, I've met their children, I've met their pets. It's really kind of given us an inside look as to what some of those needs might be. So, count our little victories here that we can get from this sometime. One thing I really recommend is assessment, because I think it's getting to know your employees. That's critical, and getting to know your coworkers. So anything you can do. I'm a big fan of DISC. I'm a licensed DISC provider, I confess. I like DISC because it teaches me about myself, but it also teaches me about others and how I can, modify my behavior in some situations to understand their behavior so that we can work together. It gives me an appreciation for people of different styles. But there's a lot of assessments out there, whatever you use. The point is just getting to know each other and understanding what each other's needs are. Because truly, if you want me to self-motivate, you have to meet my needs. So identifying those needs, that's really the key to motivation. You can't really motivate me, but you can create an environment that allows me to self-motivate. And here's the good news. We know that people who use their strengths every day on the job are likely to be more engaged and happier with their lives in general. So finding my strengths, allowing me to use my strengths so that my needs can be met, that's what we really need. So that's the secret to motivation. Now you can't really do it to anyone. They have to self-motivate. So we're really going to have to work to understand our employees, identify their needs, and get to know them better. Oh boy, this is it, right? Dealing with change. I use this picture for dealing with change because it brings back some really funny memories for me. We took our daughter on a trip to Hawaii, and we went into a little museum. And it was actually in the building that the series Hawaii 5-0 uses to film their series right now. Or, well, I think they just went off the air, but the Hawaii 5-0 thing with the little statue out front and everything. We go in and they have a museum, and it's one of these museums where they have it all set up like it used to look back in the day, and you're allowed to touch things. And my daughter came across a phone like this, and she's looking at it, and we said, that's a phone. And she just stared at it, just kept staring at it, and for probably a full 2 minutes. Then she says, am I allowed to try this out? It's like, yeah, it says touch anything you want. So she's trying to figure out how you would call someone. It was so funny. She was pushing all the buttons on the phone. Well, there are no buttons. She was pushing everything. She pushed the digits, the 1, 2, 3. She thought they were probably digital, so she could just touch them and that'll work, like a touch screen. That didn't work. So then she's putting her finger inside the little dial, That doesn't work either. When we finally showed her how to do it, she was like, "You got to be kidding me. You have to do all 9 digits like this. You have to put your finger in every one of them." It's like, yeah, you do. It was pretty funny. Dealing with change is difficult, especially right now. So here's a few things that might help you to help your employees. First, did you know that when we have change, people go through stages of change, much the same way they go through stages of grief? Yeah. So this is happening right now to all of us because we're all going through change. The thing that's hard about this is that no two people go through it the same. Some people spend longer in one stage than another. Some people even get stuck sometimes in one of these stages. But we start with shock or denial. And that's what happened in March. It's like, what, we're shutting down for a week? That's ridiculous. I can't even believe, we can't do anything. Okay, we will come out of this really quick. It'll be fine in a couple of weeks, we'll get back to work. And then it's going on longer and we're going, no way, right? No, we couldn't believe it. Even now there's some shock, like we're starting to back up and going, well, we're going to shut down again. No, this can't be, I'm absolutely shocked. Then the flood of emotion, usually anger, sometimes just desperation, just like disbelief. But mostly that comes out in anger. We're just like, we just can't handle it. So emotion, sometimes tears, sometimes just that flood of emotion. And then the bargaining, all right, if we can't do this, then we'll do this. You've all been there trying to negotiate a different solution than what we're faced with. Depression or grief. Yeah, we all have to go through it. This is interesting because a lot of times when we're going through change and we're working with people, we don't really allow for that. I've actually been called in a couple of times to try to help improve morale and found out that what was going on was a change had occurred and they just really were in this stage 4 right here. They were just kind of grieving and depressed about it. They just hadn't waited long enough, given people enough opportunity to accept it, so it wasn't a morale issue. It's just that we're kind of stuck in this level of change, and we just have to allow for that. We have to allow for people to grieve sometimes and to be a little depressed about it before we get to acceptance. And notice with acceptance, and here's a caveat, it's not just intellectual, it's also emotional. Before it's full acceptance, it has to be both of those things. And this comes from Dr. Ben Bissel's research. But yeah, 5 stages of change. What's also interesting about this is even when change is good, we go through these phases. Even for good change, like my famous daughter that you've now heard about, she got a new car, right? So she comes in and she says, hey, my friend's going to come out with me. We're going to take some pictures of the car. I'm like, cool. So I go outside and in the driveway is the old car and the new car. Is she taking pictures of the new car? No, we're taking pictures with the old car. I'm going to miss it. It was my first car. Because any kind of change, whether good or bad, there is loss. We're changing, we're losing what we were doing, moving to something different. So we have to allow people that before they can really get to acceptance and be excited for new and embrace the change. Just a few ideas for you here, a few ways to help your employees. First of all, it's just keeping things as familiar as you can. So those meetings that you had before all this happened, keep having them. If you usually have a weekly staff meeting, keep having a weekly staff meeting. As a matter of fact, you might want to even increase. Keep things as stable as you can. Remember that people need stability in whatever form you can grab onto right now. It's normal for people to grieve. Don't be freaked out about it. You just need to give people the time to work through that. It's normal, but you do have to watch for warning signs of trouble because, as I said, sometimes people get stuck. If you see people maybe having physical symptoms, they're physically sick, or they're sending you other signals that they're just not okay. Their performance takes a sharp decline, or maybe they just stop doing anything for 2 months. you really need to check in, because it's possible that this is a little deeper, that they need a little more coaching, they need a little more assistance in moving through the change. So watch out for some of that kind of stuff. And just know that change always produces fear for everybody. Expect it. People are afraid right now. We don't know what's coming. We don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know what work is going to look like when we get through this. Yes, we're afraid. Let's acknowledge it. Change produces fear. Don't forget to check in with your folks frequently. This is a time to do one-on-ones. Sometimes I'm having meetings, one-on-ones, like I did a few lunches with some people. We're sitting there, we're both going to bring our lunch and we're just going to talk while we eat lunch. It's really kind of nice because I can eat while they're talking, and ask a few questions, let them talk, and I eat my lunch. And then while they're eating theirs, I have time to just tell them everything I want to tell them. Kind of an interesting tactic, but yeah. So do what you can to check in with everybody frequently. All right, change. And here's number 5, master the art of appreciation. What's surprising for me is I do a lot of workshops with people live, which I did before March, back in the day when we used to do live workshops and have people in the room with us. And a lot of times I'll start leadership workshops by asking them, what do you think are the most important aspects of leadership? Can you believe this? Probably, I'm going to say 90% of the time, appreciation is not on the list. People don't even think about it. Oh, wow. Appreciation is so important. How can I feel valued if I don't know that you appreciate me? So again, this goes back to paying attention to your employees and their needs and knowing how to appreciate me, because it's different with everybody. Some people, they just want money. But I read this really interesting survey a couple of months ago about the percentage of people who would set aside money in lieu of a change in title. If they could just have their title that they wanted, they weren't so worried about the money. Make me a senior. Make me a senior. Don't worry about the money, but just make me more important. Now I'm a senior analyst. Yeah, for real. So it's different for different people. Some people want to hug. Other people would just like, well, we probably don't ever want to hug anybody again. But you know what I'm saying? Some people never want to be touched. Other people just want to hug, Some people love flowers. Some people don't do that. So really, it just depends. Probably one of the most meaningful appreciation gifts I ever gave, which this will sound silly, but I gave an employee a little kitchen set, a Fisher-Price kitchen set that I think was under $10. And I gave it to her because she cleaned out the break room refrigerator, which was awful. And she volunteered and did it on her own and didn't even, didn't make a fuss. And I gave her that. Now, she had a 3-year-old at the time. And the 3-year-old thought this was like the best gift ever. So she was just so thrilled. If I had given her a $25 gift certificate to Amazon, it couldn't have been better. She was just thrilled. So it just depends on the person and their need. But the point is, it doesn't have to be anything outrageous. Sometimes the simpler, the better. And sometimes just saying thank you makes a big difference. And appreciation too. I've got this new movement going, and I'm trying to convince people of this, that we should forget about work-life balance. And instead, we should go for work-life integration. Let's just forget about work-life balance, because I think work-life balance is kind of a silly idea. When I worked in government, we had very strict rules about work is work and home is home, and you don't cross the two. You shouldn't be getting phone calls here from your family, because you're at work. And oh, by the way, when you're at home, you shouldn't be doing work, because we would have to pay you overtime. We're government and we can't do that. I mean, they were just so adamant that we had to separate those two. And I always thought that was so silly, because honestly, there's never a time when I was at work that I didn't think of my family. And there was never a time when I was with my family that I didn't think of work. As a matter of fact, I had some of my best ideas for work when I was away from work, So separating the two, I don't know that you can balance, but I do think that work-life integration is what we're going for. Now we're seeing people's children, we're seeing people's home lives. We understand that they need flexibility. We're homeschooling. Maybe I need to be able to not be online until 9 o'clock so that I can get my kids set up for homeschooling, whatever. I mean, there was this guy, James Autry, and he wrote this book called For Love or Profit a few years ago. And this was his line. He said, everybody deserves special treatment. I love that. That's stuck with me. Everybody deserves special treatment. So whatever that special treatment is for that employee, that's what it needs to be. And guess where that goes back to? Needs. My special treatment fulfills my needs. You fulfill my needs, I'm motivated. I'm motivated, I'm engaged. If I'm engaged and motivated, guess what? I'm going to be able to handle change better. So it all starts to tie together. So I'm like campaigning for work-life integration, not work-life balance. Think of it in a new way. All right. So thinking about things differently, let's talk about why this will work. And we're getting close on time, so I'm just going to tell you why. You know why? Because leadership and management, everything that we're doing, I believe it's all about our people. It's all about people. So if we can help our people to do the work that they need to do to make our organization successful and therefore be self-fulfilled, then we're all that. That's really what it's all about. I think the secret is that it's all about your people. It's all about your people. Being the boss is all about the people you lead. And I say this to everyone. If you don't genuinely care about people, then get out of management. Get out of management before you do irreversible harm to the people that look up to you, because they really do. So, well, that was a whirlwind, wasn't it? Be a better boss. What will you do? I tell everybody this too. Whenever you do a webinar like this, and thank you for being here, it's like, it doesn't matter that what you just listened to, it matters what you do after you leave. So please take a few minutes to make yourself a commitment, to make a commitment to yourself, promise yourself, look at least one of these things and decide that you're going to work on this. For more help, my book is Becoming a Better Boss. I listed all the topics we talked about today. There's guides and help for you in all of those chapters there. It's available on Amazon if you're interested. And thank you so much for being here with me today. And just know this last thing, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. You have the skills that you need to do this. Don't forget that. Don't panic. You got this. Thanks, everyone.
Well, I got a question.
All right.
What are some effective non-financial incentives during these times? I like the word that they used, incentives rather than motivators. But
Yeah.
effective non-financial incentives during these times.
Well, as I said, it really depends on the person. Let me take this screen share now so we can talk here. It really depends on the person, but there's just so many things. I mean, the other day I got this little tiny envelope in the mail from someone, and it had a lapel pin that was a star. And see, I have this thing about stars. See, I like stars. I tell people, you're a star. I use these in my webinars. I say, oh man, Kelly, you're a star. And I put this up for them and they're so happy. That little lapel pin meant so much. I mean, it was just, thank you. That was sweet. I picked up these at Publix the other day. I send these out, thanks. So I send those out to people just to say thank you for, whatever they did for me, just for being here, for listening, for giving me an idea. There's just so much you can do. Why do you think these people put pens out with their name on it? Anything, just value me and show me that you appreciate me. And it doesn't even have to be a physical object. It's just a card, a note, or even just a special call to say, hey, Kelly, I really appreciate you asking me that question. That was a good one. And I wanted people to hear that message. So thanks. That made a difference.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Lorna. It's time to wrap things up. Hey, tomorrow, our region, Central California region, has 5 ways to regain profitability this holiday season with brick and mortar expert Bob Phibbs, and that'll be tomorrow at 10 a.m. You can go to the regional website and sign up for that. But great chance to get into some of the things that you should do over the holiday season as a retailer to increase your sales. We will be back next week for webinar number 37, 37 in a row, on the eve of Thanksgiving Eve. And we'll be back also the eve of Christmas Eve and also the eve of New Year's Eve, just because we like eves and we said we would be with you and ride this thing out as long as we have issues. And obviously through the rest of this year, we're going to have issues. So for Lorna Kibbey, thank you for joining us again, Lorna. For Lorna Kibbey, I'm Kelly Bearden. Have a great day. We'll see you next week. Adios.